So Drew, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about exercise as medicine. I mean, that's something that, I really pulled out of our pod together is this idea that, exercise in your routine, especially for you with living with type 1 diabetes, is fundamental. Just explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, I often say, I've got this sort of like tagline that I throw around, which is exercise is a form of medicine that we can freely and happily administer to ourselves. So, I mean, I had that experience on day one after being diagnosed, where I realized the power of I was going to say the power of medicine. I just swapped it out for exercise there. The power of exercise. But I do want to be a little bit cautious with that. So over the years, I've slightly changed my opinion on how to use that phrase. I think that it's a nice little catchphrase. It's a lovely little soundbite. Exercise is medicine. But what it can do, which I've realized, is it may be a little bit misleading in some cases. And I want to be careful not to say that it's a direct substitute for pharmaceutical medicines that can really help people. It also implies that it's easy, like you just take your pill and you're good to go. Whilst I think for a lot of people, exercise, it's not that easy, and that you've got the mental part behind it of actually showing up every day and finding a way of moving that you enjoy and that you actually like to do. That can be challenging, right? So it's not as easy as just like pop a pill and you're good to go. Like it actually takes planning, it takes routine, it takes consistency, day in, day out, or at least multiple times a week for years and years and years to really get that huge benefit. Like one workout every now and then just simply isn't, we can't consider that as medicine, right? So I think how I've sort of adapted and changed over time is that exercise it can be a form of medicine that we freely and happily administer to ourselves, but we need to do it consistently. We need to understand what is the correct dose, because the dose is important. The intensity, the duration, the frequency, all of these things are really important. So what I've learned over the years is that it's like a toolkit. There's so many different ways to move, and they all have different, unique benefits for the human body. So my toolkit is developed from when I was young. I was just about like strength training and sprinting and playing rugby. And now it's like yoga and Pilates and walking and strength training and resistance training and body weight stuff. And it's just grown. It's so diverse now, and now I feel like I have a tool for every job, and that each day it might look different. Like I might have, Monday might be a strength resistance high intensity day, and the next day is like something a lot more gentle, like a yoga with a walk, or those kinds of things. So I definitely think that we should be leaning on exercise daily. I think, or we can even say movement. It doesn't have to be. Because exercise is sort of, it implies structure. It implies like reps and sets and a training program. Whilst movement, even just that word, it's so much more gentle for a lot of people. There's less fear, less anxiety. You can move in any way you want. You can dance, like go dancing. You can, there's literally you can walk your dog. You can garden, you do the gardening or carry the groceries. So I think movement, exercise, any of the words that are synonymous like that are hugely beneficial for so many disease cases, not just diabetes, but for everybody.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The word exercise can be intimidating, can't it, to some? As can the word sport, I've worked out over a period of time. Yeah. So movement is far better, far softer, far gentler. In terms of your routine, because you mentioned obviously making exercise movement part of your routine, how do you work with the circadian rhythm, and do you pay attention to that in terms of your body and your system, because it has extra needs and requirements over the course of a 24-hour period? Is that something that's important to you?
Yeah, that's such a great question, because one of the first mistakes I made after being diagnosed was, so I had that sort of pivotal moment where I realized that exercise is powerful, and then I thought that all exercise was the same. So what I would do is I would wake up really early in the morning. This was like a couple of weeks after being diagnosed with diabetes. And I would head down to Bondi Beach where I live, and I would do sprints on the soft sand. It's like really high intensity sprinting, first thing in the morning, very early, and I'd have a coffee before it, right? And I didn't realize at the time what that was doing to my physiology. But basically, the caffeine was stimulating adrenaline and cortisol, which our body has a way of putting glucose into the system, right? Into our own system, even if you don't eat anything. So I would drink the coffee, black coffee. My liver would then push all this glucose into my bloodstream. Then I would go do sprinting, which is more adrenaline, more stress hormones, which the liver would then put the tap on even more. And then at the end of the workout, my blood glucose would be like 30. It's meant to be 5 millimoles. It was like 30, like literally 6 times the normal range. No food, no carbohydrates, no sugar, nothing. This is all from inside of my own body. So that was sort of like a wake-up call, like, hold on a second. I think this is just too much stress too early in the day. I've got to find a better way around it. So now my mornings are gentle. Now I don't wake up and smash myself with like a CrossFit style workout or sprinting. Now it's like, as you do, it's a long walk with my dog first thing in the morning, watch the sunrise, do some breathing, try to bring myself to a calm place. Then I sort of ramp into my day. Then I sort of, maybe it's an hour or 2 hours later that I do that hard workout, or it's maybe later in the day. But so I learned early on that, yes, the timing of the exercise is important. And then I looked into the research around even just resistance training with diabetes and the time of day and the impact it can have. Stark differences. So if you do resistance training first thing in the morning compared to last thing sort of before dinner, that can have a big difference on your overnight blood glucose control and the next 24 hours too. So yes, the timing is extremely important.
And I guess timing of meals must be crucial for you as well, is it?
Yeah, meal timing is something I've, again, experimented with. I'm not scared of an experiment. I tried some fasting for a little bit. I did some intermittent fasting where I would eat my first meal, after midday, sometimes like 2 p.m., which allowed me to have like 4, 5, 6 hours after getting up in the morning with not much insulin on board, meaning that I didn't have to give injections. I didn't have to worry about going low, because the main worry is if you have too much insulin and you're moving around, that your blood glucose goes low. Didn't have to worry about that when I was fasting. So it was interesting to play around with that. But now I sort of just have a way more balanced approach. Like I feel like I'm less extreme than ever before. Now I just eat when I'm hungry. I don't stick to actually like meals at certain times. I just listen to my body. But I know I have strategies how to mitigate going low or going too high. So I know how to use my insulin. I know how to use my body as movement. And it's sort of this like balancing act between, movement to keep my blood glucose in range, or insulin to keep it in range, and then food to bring my blood glucose back up if it's going low. But generally speaking, I eat 3 meals a day, and maybe I'll have a snack in between. Some days I have 1 or 2 meals. Like I'm not too militant about it. I'm quite relaxed with it.
And what about sleep? Do you sleep well? Can you sleep well?
This has been a journey. Wow. So after being diagnosed, I was told that one of the most dangerous times for people with diabetes is overnight. Unfortunately, you can die in your sleep, and it's not that uncommon for people with type 1 to die in their sleep. And I wasn't using a CGM, which has alerts and alarms. So it'll basically wake me up if my blood glucose is starting to trend down, right? So what I did was, and I still can't believe I did this, I set an alarm for every 2 hours after going to bed so I could wake up and check my blood glucose. And I was finger pricking at the time. So let's say I went to bed at 9, I'd wake up at 11, prick my finger. If I was in range, try to go back to sleep. Then I'd wake up again 2 hours later, do the same thing, all the way till the morning. So I was waking up, hearing this alarm every freaking 2 hours for like the whole night. And my sleep was terrible. Like obviously I was never sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. And I was exhausted, and I felt, and then that, even just one sleepless night can make your glucose and insulin sensitivity worse the next day. So it was this cycle of negativity where I wasn't sleeping, my diabetes management was getting worse, so on and so forth. So it took me years to figure out how to get an evening routine that sort of like sets me up for a good sleep. I don't do any alarms anymore. I did that for about a year or so, the alarm setting. And then I eventually had the courage to sleep without the anxiety of going low. So the scariest part was just I every night I thought I was going to like die in my sleep. So I would have nightmares sometimes that my sugar was, for me or for anyone with diabetes, if your blood glucose is, below say 3.6 or 3.8, you're trending into like dangerous territory. But I would have nightmares that my sugar was like 1.0. And I'd wake up and check and it would be normal. But I was so scared about this whole sleep thing that it was impossible. So it took years, but now I'm good. Now I've got an evening routine. I can sleep for 8 hours. I wear a Whoop. It tells me every morning how good my sleep was or how bad it was. But generally speaking, I'm a pretty good sleeper these days.
So how did you resolve your sleep hygiene then? What did you do? I mean, you say you stopped, so you consciously decided not to wake yourself every 2 hours because that was creating huge anxiety issues. And was there anything else that you did prior to going to bed that really made a difference?
Well, what I did was I decided to give my last insulin dose, so the dose that I would have with my dinner. So every meal I have to give insulin, right? The insulin stays in your system for about 3 to 4 hours. I made sure that my last dose was 4 hours before bed so that I could sleep and rest my mind, and knowing that I didn't have a lot of insulin floating around, so my risk of going low was now a lot less. So that was the big change for me. I just said to myself, like, if my bedtime is 10 o'clock, 6 o'clock is my last dose. Even if my blood glucose is a little bit higher, that's safer in the short term. So I'll go to bed instead of with a perfect blood glucose, perfect, so to speak, I'll let it be a little bit higher so I can sleep easy, no insulin on board, get a good night's sleep. And then over, weeks and months, I'll slowly bring that number back towards a normal range and build the confidence to be able to sleep a night through, knowing that I'm not just crashing in the night. Yeah. So it was just an insulin strategy, timing of the insulin. That was what changed everything for me. And then, like my evening routine is nice and gentle as well. Like it's sort of like, what's his name? Matt Walker, the sleep guru.
Matthew Walker,
he says it's like landing
guru.
a plane. Matthew, yes, it's like landing a plane. And I always think about that at night. So just slow, just sort of gradual, nice, calming routine that gets you ready for bed. Like I'm not wired before bed and then just jumping straight in. It takes like 1 or 2 hours to get ready for bed.
I'm so pleased you found a way to deal with that because, that sounds harrowing. And like you say, if you can't get that bit right, the rest of it's a disaster. So you have to get this bit right, don't you? It's so fundamental to managing all of it.
It really is. Like, even if you think about just trying to get a good workout the next day, like a good workout starts with a good night's sleep. Everything starts with a good night's sleep. I just don't think you can function and perform without a good sleep. And I think that this CGM that I wear has helped so much as well. Like I feel like I've got this safety net now that will give me an alert or an alarm that wakes me up. And it does. Like I get woken up by it quite often and it's annoying at the time, but I'm thankful for it. Like when I hear it go off in the night, I always think to myself, if I wasn't wearing it, would I have just slept through that low blood glucose and would I have woken up the next day? It's an incredible piece of technology.
Well, I'm so pleased you're living in a time where it exists. Drew, thanks so much for your chat. It's been fascinating. I've learned absolutely stacks. And I have huge respect for the way that you're managing this. It's really inspiring. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk about this stuff.